Well, hey, Sherri, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Hi, Heidi. It's so good to be here.
So I'm super excited to have you here. First of all, last time you were here, we had a gazillion downloads of that show, really popular. It turns out that people are asking the question, are faith and science compatible? And we've been told for, eons now that faith and science are not compatible. This gave birth, of course, to the rise in theistic evolution and people trying so desperately to reconcile their faith. And you've been at the forefront of this conversation for a really long time. And you say that science and faith are absolutely not at odds with each other. How can you be so bold, Jerry, as to jump into such a topic as this with such confidence?
Well, I mean, strictly from a Christian vantage point or worldview, if God created all things and made things the way they are, which the Bible says, which we know is truth, then we shouldn't, first of all, be afraid to study our world because it should give us evidences of his creative hand. We should see, when we see order, we see design. It points to a creator. In fact, we know that the scripture says that all creation sings and gives glory to
Yes.
him because of its presence. And so we shouldn't be afraid of science. We should not be afraid of what new discoveries are being made because, again, we know the truth. We know that it points to our creator. And the more that we are finding, the more that we are studying, the more we see true evidences of fingerprints of his handiwork, of his design. I love to use the example when I talk to students about that because our students are really struggling with this because they
Yep.
don't know what to do with it. But you're walking along on a hike in a forest and you come across a boulder and it has the word hello carved into it. You know that didn't just pop up, right?
Right.
There's no way. And why? Because you could have a tree fall and knock into it, or someone throwing rocks at it, or whatever. But it has information. It carries information, something that has meaning. And so when we see that, we see design, and we know some creator came by and made this. And so it's the same basic idea. And when we see design, when we see order, when we see organization, and we see complexity, it's just testimony that there was one who made it. There's no random mathematical probability that could have happened by accident.
This
So
is
that's why I get
always
excited about it.
And this has always been a passion of yours. I mean, since I met you, obviously, you're working with Apologia, but your history as a marine biologist is pretty interesting. Tell me how you got started on your path to becoming a scientist, and then obviously you get married, then you're a mom, then you're a homeschool mom, and now you're back to like scientist extraordinaire. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, it's started off as in college. I was a new believer. Met my husband there. We both kind of committed ourselves to the Lord at the same time, began reading the Bible. And at the same time, I was reading my Bible for the first time. I was in a secular college majoring in pre-med. I always loved science and things. And I was kind of that, constant nerd that everybody talks about. That was me. And so was my husband. So, it was a match made in
Yeah,
heaven.
yes, it was, and incidentally, the match made in heaven has produced how many really brilliant kids between the
Oh,
two
wow.
geniuses that had genius kids. You've got
We have four children
four
and
children, and
love
what are
them to
they doing?
pieces. We have one who's a cancer researcher. We have one who is in the Air Force. He's a flight surgeon, and that's new. So he's just became a flight surgeon. We have one who
Exciting.
is an IT design research and development guy, and then we have our daughter who has got a master's in counseling, and so she counsels all kinds of people in Christian counseling and just loves it.
So
So
when I said that the two geniuses made genius children, I actually wasn't kidding. I just wanted you to back me up. All right, so continue
this
with your
is the
story.
Lord. So I was actually reading my Bible for the first time in college at the same time I was taking a class titled Evolution. And the textbook of the class was Darwin's Origin of Species, which is the book that Charles Darwin wrote when he first came up with his theories and ideas about how everything came to be without a
It's
creator.
like the Bible for evolutionists.
Yes, actually,
Yes.
yes. And so I'm reading these two juxtaposed and I'm seeing God's truth and I'm seeing his explanations. And if for those who've read this book, most people don't because it's kind of weird and long and this thick. But most of his statements are, well, we just don't know yet, but science will eventually show it. We just don't know yet, but science will eventually show it. And so, like at the time when he wrote it, they didn't know what a cell was, what a cell contained. Just a single cell. It was basically a water balloon with some chemicals in it. Today, we know. I mean, he said, we don't know yet, but one day we'll know. Today, we know.
Yeah.
Today, we see a whole city inside of a single cell. It's absolute complexity. So that's a side area, but that just got me excited, and that started me on my apologetic journey. I got a job working at Walt Disney World's Living Seas at Epcot Center, and worked there for several years before we had children. And then I did research on shark behavior, and then I got
Shark
pregnant.
behavior. Wait.
Yes, yeah.
Wait, go back. Wait, listen, I'm not a scientist. I just play one on my podcast, but I'm a little bit of a scientist in that I did watch Jaws, okay? And okay. So Sherri, why? So shark behavior, like tell me a little bit about that.
Well, they're fascinating animals for one. They're considered low on the evolutionary scale and timeline, and yet they've got this ability to identify magnetic and electromagnetic waves, so that they can find. They're so keen in that they can identify a 9-volt battery from 1,000 miles away.
Holy moly!
There's so much more to that. But anyway, I was fascinated with these animals.
And don't humans have electricity in our system?
We do.
Which would just tell me stay out of the water, but you go right ahead.
Just don't go splashing in the water and bleeding, because that's what they're drawn to, blood and splashing.
Okay, I'll try not.
You're just swimming, you're good.
Okay.
So I loved studying them. And again, there's another testimony to creation, because how can such a, quote, low on the evolutionary timeline organism develop super complex abilities? It doesn't fit. And so I was studying them, and as in the aquarium, we're studying these animals and how they behave with divers in the water, dolphins in the water. And so it was a very natural habitat. And so we studied what they did and where their swimming movements were based on what was going on in the aquarium. And so I was able to publish research on their behavior. By the way, you're more likely to get attacked and killed by a vending machine than you are a shark, statistically speaking.
So this is really important, not to mention all the garbage that you're eating from the food that you get out of a vending machine, but that's a podcast for another day.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. No, I'm talking about the vending machine actually falling on you and you dying from it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you're more likely for that.
So all the stuff that we hear out there and the highlights of people being attacked by sharks, you're like, go have a swim, you'll be fine.
Yeah, a majority of it is, Shark Week on, Discovery Channel or whatever.
I never watch that anymore. Horrifying.
No. I mean, try watching it muted. It's much calmer too. You don't hear the music in the background.
Oh, no kidding. Dun 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 dun.
Right,
oh,
right?
I cannot. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, it's they're misunderstood. They're fascinating animals. If you just don't behave like a dying sea lion or sea turtle, you're fine. I mean, they attack surfers because sadly surfers look like a dying sea turtle from underneath the water looking up at their silhouette. So it's just it's a case of misunderstanding. They're just, they're nice. And they have this sad, frowny, evil face with teeth, but that's just their face. They're not frowning at you.
As opposed to Heidi St. John's little mini golden doodle, who just looks perpetually either you're like, sad, why are you leaving me? Or happy because you're home. Yes.
Those eyes.
It's the eyes. I'm telling you. And the sharks have the evil eyes. They do.
That's right. They can't help it. That's just the way God made them. No. So anyway,
so
I did that. And then I got pregnant with our first child. And we just really felt like God wanted me to be home with our children. I faced all kinds of, ridicule. Why would you do such a thing? Why would you leave this career? Why would you, and I just knew God wanted me to do that. And that's something that I really felt like it was. And I tell this to moms. A lot of moms feel like they're putting their careers aside to be home with their children or to home educate, which is what we did. We home educated our children. It wasn't I think you can't think of it as your plan B. It is God's plan A.
Wow,
God's
so
you
good.
to do that.
Yeah.
It is and he's going to use the experiences, the skills, the maturing. I mean, come on, don't we mature emotionally and spiritually when we're moms? All the things in our lives that we experience as we're doing this as moms, to use those skills for the next assignment he has for us.
Yes,
because they're not always going to be in the house, and so if we see that path as not, what you might see as a convoluted path. If we see it as a straight line, we're like, God, what are you going to show me in this? Whether it's suffering, whether it's challenges, whether it's wins, whatever it is.
Well, and motherhood is sanctifying. I mean, let's be honest. But Sherri, I completely agree with you. I mean, I stayed home with our children. And, I feel like I'm just getting started, like in a career. Most of our kids are grown now. We still have Sailor, who's in high school this year. You just can't even believe it. Uh,
Oh,
but most of our kids are grown, and we've got, coming up on 6 grandbabies. And I still have a lot of life left in me and a lot of things I think that the Lord wants me to do. And so this idea that children are this massive interruption and you're never going to have a life, never going to have a career. Women who want that, who have passions outside of mothering, I think when you lay those down and you focus on your children, you get the blessing that boomerangs back at you when the Lord takes you back to whatever it is you were doing before. And now you've got the perspective of having raised children, and you've got these wonderful adult children who are also your friends.
yes.
And you still have life left in you. It's the feminists that lie to women and tell them that you have to give everything up and motherhood is this massive interruption. It just simply is not true.
Well, we belittle that position as well. We don't see motherhood as being a valuable position, as
Yes.
one we would aspire to. If you ask young girls what you want to be when you grow up, and if you don't want to hear them say mother,
Right.
like that's something you wouldn't want. It was, of all the things I've done so far, it is by far the best thing
Me
I've ever
too.
done, and I would do it
Absolutely.
again. But
Yeah.
but then when we struggle in our society and our culture with leaving behind or putting aside. I can tell you the things that I learned. First of all, home educating my kids. I had a terrible grammar education. I'm a product of the public school system, but we moved 4 times during my middle school years, just because of different situations with our family. And that's the time when you learn your composition writing and,
Yep.
and
Yep.
grammar and all that stuff. I did not know how to write. And I learned how to write with each of my children 4 times through. And what has God got me doing today? I'm writing curriculum. I'm writing books. I'm a writer, which is nothing that I thought I would do.
Yeah.
And so he used those. That's one example of one thing he used tangibly
Yeah.
in teaching me, that for my skills, for what he had for me in the next season.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just so cool to have that vantage point of what he's doing back there. Because I don't know about you, but I think retirement is also a lie that we get in our culture.
Absolutely. Yep.
I mean, you can retire from a job, but you don't retire to nothing. We retire to something else. And what's
Yeah.
our next assignment? I mean, till the
Yes.
day we have our last breath, we can be praying for people. We can be ministering. We can be loving. We can be reading. We can be doing things that are active and productive for the kingdom. That
Yes.
I feel like just, spending the days on the front porch knitting or on the golf course it's not what we should be aspiring to. It's like, Lord, what do you
No.
have for me?
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so,
And I think it helps us move into different seasons of our life instead of having just fear and dread. The Lord has a different assignment. I was just talking to Jerry, Jay's mom, and I was just talking
yes.
to her yesterday, as a matter of fact. She turned to 80 last January, and we've lived together, with her for 15 years. And there are significant changes that happen from 65 years old to 80. And
Yes.
she was telling me last night that she really feels like the Lord has her moved into a different season. And she was saying, honestly, it can be scary. Like if you think, oh, I'm slowing down, I don't have the energy that I used to have, until you get before the Lord and you realize God still has something for me. And I'm a little bit closer to meeting him than I was a few years ago. And it just changes I think it changes the way we age. I mean, that was what Dr. Dobson told me, 20 years ago when I did my first interview with him. He's like, retirement's not in the plan for God's people. We don't retire until God calls us home and takes us off the battlefield. And I love, Sherri, that is something the Lord's impressing on your heart too, because I think generations of parents need to hear God's not done with you until
Right.
he calls you home.
That's right. And he's using whatever you're experiencing now to build in you something. And again, there's going to be challenging times. All of us have those in our
Yes.
lives. It's like, and asking the Lord, what are you doing in this? Or I can't wait to see what God's going to do through this or how he's going to use it. And we've had to make ourselves say that sometimes when times are
Yes.
tough. I
Yes.
can't wait to see what God's going to do with this. And let me see it now. because he does. He
Yeah.
uses the joys, the challenges, the experiences to build in us skills. We're not completed projects yet. And we have complete assignments throughout our lives. So it
So
is
to the
just
homeschool mom right now who has got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old who doesn't like her sweater and all of the things. What's your encouragement to her right now? And she just feels like everything she's doing doesn't matter and no one sees her.
You're doing the best thing you could possibly be doing. It is the most desirable, biblically speaking, the most rewarding, it is the highest thing I believe that a mom can do, being with her children. Plus, you will reap the benefits of building relationship with your kids in a way that you cannot build when they're out of the home most of the day, in a way that you cannot build when they're under the influence of other teachers. Now, I'm not saying you want to cloister them away from other people. We want godly mentors for our kids, but it gets weird. It's wearisome. I get it. I mean, that it doesn't seem glamorous, and frankly, it's not.
Yeah.
There are many non-glamorous things. I mean, they got to eat every day.
Come on. Why
them,
Sherri, why do they want dinner every single day? Every day.
I don't know. I don't
Every
know.
day. And we just did this yesterday. We just did this again. I just
I will
told you
tell
to
you
pick
that-
up your clothes off the floor. I just did this.
I
Yeah.
just did this again. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't. I tell people I can't keep plants alive. Like, I even kill air plants.
Me
Like,
too,
air plants.
girl.
I know,
Yes.
right? But maybe that's why, because the kids tell me they're hungry and the plants don't. So maybe that's the benefit. They cry and they let me know.
This is why I have moved to fake plants.
There you go.
I have them. I will send you, when we're done today, I will send you a picture of the entry of my house. Someone said to me the other day, like, oh my word, Heidi, so beautiful. You have all these fall plants. I'm like, yeah, they're fake. I gave up. I gave up. You can
Choose
only
your
tell
battles.
choose your battles. Thank you.
Keep your kids alive. Let the
That's
plants die. Right?
That's right. And if you can do both, then I appreciate it. And you're probably the blogger that I'm going to go to when I realize my plants are dying. Yes,
That's
I
right.
love that.
But I'm seriously, to those moms who are, you just don't see the end. You don't see the end. And I know you know that the days are long and the years are short. I know everybody hears that and says that. But I would say persevere
Yeah, that's
through
good.
this. There's such a, the enemy wants us to feel lost and weary and not see progress. You do the same thing every day and you don't see the results with your children. Maybe you're raising your children and encouraging them, and you keep seeing the same issues. Continue to persevere. That, again, that's, like I said, being home with my kids, God used those experiences to grow me closer to him, where all I could do was pray to the Lord and be on my knees. Father, I cannot do this without you. Help me love this child who's behaving in a very unlovable way right now.
No kidding. Yes. Right. Lord help
Because
me.
we all are, and I'm just as awful too. And so in my behavior, and I need the Lord. And so it was such an experience that helped to build me, and I'm still working on it. I'm not done, but it's just something that helps us get through that perspective, stepping back, looking at the picture again. Lord, what's most important here? Is it the spilled, broken bottle of honey? Why do they put honey in glass jars? I do not know.
Why?
Clean that up. Or is it the crying child? It's the crying child. Go to the important things. I always tell moms this as well. Cereal for dinner is cheaper than therapy for mom. You can just, stay in the pajamas all day. The husband comes home, why are you in pajamas? I was building relationship with my children.
That's right.
Character training.
That's
That
right.
is so much more important. And that's going to get you through those challenging seasons, because they are hard, but they're valuable. They're so valuable. Motherhood is such an undervalued, underappreciated career. And then right after that is education. And so if you're a home educating mom, boy, do we have to fight the cultural just feelings of how we are, how we behave,
And how
it's a
people see
challenge.
us too. I think, when I first started homeschooling, I didn't know very many people that were doing it. And we got a lot of shade, from even people in our own family who are just like, why would you do that? That just seems like such a dumb thing to do. And when I'm surrounded, by diapers and dishes and homeschooling, and everybody's losing their math book and all the thing, and I would sometimes wonder, like, why am I doing this? And now I have the gift of perspective. Now I can look back and say, oh, that was why. When, we want to give our kids the very best opportunity that we can to walk in right relationship with the Lord. And what the school system takes away from you, you'll never get back. And that is the gift of time. We have time as homeschool moms to pour into our kids. And it honestly was the very best thing that I ever did with my 20s and 30s and 40s Actually, I had 7 kids. I'm going to be 194 years old by the time, in homeschool years, by the time Sailor graduates. And I can see the jumping off place, but I was talking, I mean, my audience knows this about me because I keep saying it. There's 20 years between our oldest and our youngest. And I'm tired now. Like at 54 years old, I'm still teaching, math I'm still like today, actually, when I go home, because I fly on an airplane, I leave tomorrow morning. But today I'm going to be going and we're going to be talking about the Tigris and Euphrates rivers for the 4 millionth time. I'm going to be doing a map of Mesopotamia for the 4 millionth time. We're going to be talking about, a cuneiform again. And I had to ask the Lord, help me to finish strong, because I've realized, Sherri, anybody can start strong. It is hard to finish strong. It's
That's
hard
true.
to do that.
Yeah, a lot of homeschool families in particular, a lot of moms will say, well, if we can get through elementary school and then I just don't want to deal with the rest of it. Every
Oh,
season is
no.
so important.
So
And
important.
and we are tempted too. I talk about the new season of things as my kids got older. I didn't jump in full bore until my older one, or my youngest one, was in a position where she could come along with me, she could minister with me, we could do things together. The temptation to just end soon,
Yeah.
and go off on some other thing is so strong when they get older. But they need us.
They
Our kids,
do.
our teens need us just as much as our toddlers need us. And what an opportunity to have, again, like you said, those times, those moments. That quality time doesn't necessarily come without quantity time. Because
Boy.
when they come up with those moments of wanting to talk, wow, it's usually like when I'm ready for bed.
It's
Like
11 o'clock at night. It
what
is.
is
This
right?
happened to me last night, Sherri, at 10:47. My budding ballerina came upstairs, and she had just been watching a movie with Summer and Sydney, and so she's running upstairs, and she's, exuberant and loud as a near 14-year-old would be. And my husband was like, shh. I told you, I'm like, look at us, honey. We're acting like we're in the nursing home. Okay. It's just, we're like, oh, be quiet. Oh, my goodness. And she's like, this is what happens when you have a 7th child who's 20 years younger than your 33-year-old. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But there's such a blessing in it. And I think we need to see it in every season of our lives. And I know that there are lots and lots and lots of homeschool parents that are listening to this who need that encouragement to just stay in there. Because just like you, Sherri, the very best thing about my life, apart from following Jesus, is our kids. Hands down, bar none, better than any book I've ever written, better than any place I've ever been, any speaking gig I ever got. It's our children, and watching them raising their children and watching them walk with the Lord. There really is nothing better in this world than what God gives you in the gift of raising your kids.
Yeah, Heidi, it sounds like it sounds like a platitude, but it's not. And that's why I feel like we need to keep saying that, because
Yeah.
it is so important in my life. I mean, there would be no point if I didn't have my kids. Not that kids are the be all end all, but the opportunity to build relationship with the children that God gave me.
Yeah.
That's if he's placed children in your home, moms, then that's what your assignment is. And what a blessing. How sad would it be to put it aside for something that the world says might be better, and to miss the most beautiful moments, the wonderful relationships. When I see my kids even contacting each other and asking each other
Hanging out.
questions,
Yeah.
praying for each other. Oh yeah, I talked to so and so the other day, and he told me this. You did, I get so excited
Yeah.
when they do that. So taking vacations together and trips together, that came from homeschooling as well, in my opinion, because they grew up together as friends, as
Yes.
compatriots. And any friends that we had outside the home were our friends, not your friends and my friends, or
That's
my
right.
5th grade friends and your 7th grade friends and your 9th grade friends that we'd ever talked with. It was all of our friends. So my children just grew up knowing each other as their friends, and that sibling relationship building warms my heart just as much as my
Yeah.
relationship with them. So
It's so precious. It is. And look at you. I mean, now you've come full circle because you're back to marine biology, this passion that God gave you, this brilliant mind that he's given you. And now you've got these wonderful kids that you've raised, and you can look back at this beautiful accomplishment that you and your husband poured into your kids. And now they're walking with the Lord. And for goodness sake, if you need a surgeon, you got a couple right there in your family. So that's always amazing too. I always think I would like a couple things out of my kids. I'd like a hairstylist, truly. A hairstylist and a surgeon would be great. But since I don't have a surgeon, you do, so I can
We'll just
always talk to
work
you.
together.
We'll just, absolutely true. Let's talk about this faith and science for just a minute, because last time you were on my show, we really touched on this topic, and it resonated with my audience because, like you said at the top of the hour today, the world has done a pretty good job at telling us that these two things are incompatible, and the only way they are compatible is if you become a theistic evolutionist. But you've had a pretty different experience as a marine biologist, and I want to know how has this impacted your understanding of science?
I look for the wonder, and not only have God's given me the opportunity to not just work in marine biology, but in all the middle school and high school sciences, because I teach courses, video courses for apologia. And
it's not a bad gig for a girl
fun.
who loves science.
We get to travel all over the world. My husband Dave is my videographer, and so we go where the science is happening. And
I
we get to
love
do
it.
video. It's so fun.
I love it.
And I'm grateful. I'm super grateful. But I just see the wonder in it. And, all of our kids are born with this natural wonder of the world around them. And we kind of beat it out of them by making them memorize tables and names and tests.
So true.
And so I see, when I look at lichen on a rock, it just baffles my mind, because a lichen it's a relationship between two different organisms that live together. It's not one thing, it's two. And they work together, and not only, like, one of them, they can't live without each other. One of them can't get its own nutrients, and one of them can't protect itself from the elements. And so when they live together, they can both survive in places like the top of a mountain. And not only do they intertwine their relationships so well, when they produce something called a diaspore, which is a spore of each one that goes off. They cannot survive without each other. It's called obligate symbiosis.
Marriage.
It's called obligate symbiosis. They have to live together. Obligate symbiosis. And so to explain how that happened via the process of evolution is mathematically, I mean, mathematicians only say impossible, but it is next to impossible. There's no way that you'd have to have a free-living alga and a free-living fungus that both mutated at the same place in history, at the same place on the planet, and find each other to live together before they die of the elements or starvation, and then instantly be able to reproduce. Mm-hmm. And we see that all throughout creation. What's happening is we're not getting that reporting. There's incomplete reporting, because scientists who hold to evolutionary theory will see these things and they'll say, well, we just haven't learned enough yet, or we haven't discovered enough yet, so we're just not going to publish that yet, or we're not going to share that yet. We're finding dinosaur bones with soft tissue. Soft tissue. That means these bones can't be
billions of years
old.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we're finding that more and more places.
Ken Ham is cheering right now. I can hear him in the back of my head. Yeah, I can hear him.
Seriously, we see fossil graveyards with, there's a place in Mississippi, it's a petrified forest, 30 feet underground, that's been exposed. And there's trees from all different climates.
Almost like there was a flood.
How in the world would they have gotten there, right?
Yeah.
And so a flood, because it has to have water to petrify them. So there's things like that. That gets me excited. And so I love to study science with that vantage point of, God, what can you show us? How can this world give testimony to and bring you glory? How can creation bring you glory? How can it, I want to see it magnify your name. And so we can see that. We see wisdom in Scripture. The hydrologic cycle, the water cycle that everybody learns in school, that's in Job. That book was written thousands of years before, I think Bernard Palissy is the name of the guy who discovered it in like the 1800s. So thousands of years earlier, God, who made everything, who made the cycle, knows about it, inspired the writer of Job to put it in there. Just fascinating. So
Amazing.
that is the truth of Scripture. There are so many truths, or when we understand the science behind those truths, and how we're supposed to have salted speech and what salt does. When you understand the chemical properties of salt, it explains it even more, that God's telling us, when we speak with words of truth, which are salty words, salted words, salt preserves, which means these words last. Salt endures. Salt enhances. You put salt even in cookies, right? Because it enhances the sweetness.
Yep.
And so the truth enhances. So when God's used that word, salt, he knew what salt did because he made the salt. And so we can study, what is salt? What does it do? How does it behave? That's what he's meaning. It kind of expands upon his truth and helps us to understand it even better. So I know I'm kind of flying all over the place, but there's so many things in creation that point to creation.
Yeah. Well, they point to a creator, and having a creator changes everything. And I think the more we know about creation, the more we see the fingerprints of God everywhere. I saw a video. This has nothing to do with what you're just saying, except for I thought of salt and little ocean creatures. I saw a video, probably on a social media platform the other day, of people going to the beach, and they were putting little piles of salt in the sand. And it looked like, were they razor clams or whatever? Like little straws that would come up out of the sand.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I think, yeah. Uh-huh.
And I was trying to figure out why it worked that way. They were just like little, they would put salt on the sand, and then within just maybe 2 minutes, just popping up like a whack-a-mole game are these and I heard someone say they were razor clams, and I'm like, that doesn't look like a clam to me. So,
Well,
I mean, this has nothing with anything, but since I'm playing a scientist today, can you tell me what that is?
This is my theory on that one. I don't know specifically if they're razor clams, but I'm wondering if you ever seen what happens if you put salt on a slug?
Unfortunately, yes. I grew up
So
in the
a slug
Pacific
is a
Northwest.
mollusk, just like clams are. And so when you put extra salt, it becomes an environment that they do not want to be in, because
Yeah.
they'll start to shrivel. Because even a salty ocean shore is not super, super salty. So I have a feeling they were like, this is bad. I'm getting
Get
out
out.
of here.
Yeah.
So that's my. I mean, people send me pictures of globs of goo.
I
that
bet.
we walked on the beach and saw this. What is it? I'm like,
It looks like someone stepped on a jellyfish and kept walking.
that's right. And I would recommend you do the same. Not step on it.
I love it.
So, yeah, I think,
I'll have to send that to you. I shall be your new friend that sends you videos. Yes.
do it. I'm happy.
Yes.
Yeah. More than
yes,
there.
I love it. Talk to the mom and dad who have science-minded kids. All right. These are the kids, and the mom, maybe a mom and dad are not science-minded. Maybe they're like Heidi St. John, and I'm more of I'm a writer. I love language. You put me in front of a computer and I write all day long because that's what I love to do.
Yeah.
And science is interesting to me, but I wouldn't know necessarily how to pull it out of my child or how to get her really interested. What do you say to parents who are like, how can I encourage the curiosity of my child who I can tell is interested in God's creation?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's so important to help foster that. And again, most kids in those elementary years love science. And so even just taking walks with them and marveling. And if you don't know what something is, you don't have to know everything. You can look it up with them. Find people who do love this stuff. Look for good books. Look for good materials that help encourage them in that interest that they have. Let them dive into, and if you're homeschooling, then you have even the better benefit of saying, hey, you love bats, let's do a unit on bats.
Yes.
We can study this
Yeah.
and take that time. It's not a rabbit trail, it's a purposeful trail that you're producing for your kids.
Kind of striking while the iron's hot.
Yeah, and then for families whose kids are not getting a good amount of encouragement in the sciences from a Christian perspective, maybe your kid's in public school or private school, or you just don't know where to go. That is a big responsibility. I think our churches have dropped the ball in that realm because they're afraid of it. I mean, they hear these guys with British accents and goatees saying, well, we know that science.
And all the letters after their name, which makes a regular person feel intimidated. Yeah.
It's intimidating, but we cannot be afraid of science. We need to encourage our children to see from a rational perspective. And again, there's resources all over the place that are solid that help explain to kids how we can see God's fingerprints in creation from a scientific standpoint, from the science behind it. Just again, there is no simple organism. And so for a primordial organism to pop up out of goo, it's not rational to say, because the more biomedical research that we're getting on what a cell is, what a single-celled bacterium is, that's not a simple organism. It is hyper complex. They communicate. They do all kinds of things. And so the more we're learning, the more science is showing us, the more problems with evolutionary theory we're finding. And students need to hear that because they will waver in their faith. If they're just getting God made the world from a church standpoint as part of a Sunday school lesson, and that's where it ends, God made the world, and they're not getting more, then they're going to start waffling, and that's where you're going to get your theistic evolution. And well, if God made the world, but evolution is true, then maybe they married together, and they don't. They really don't. And so
Now
I
you
would
had
just encourage them to look for good resources. And again, there's plenty out there.
well, and you've written a whole bunch of them. Let's talk about that for just a second because I've got you here, and you've got a brand new book out, and I'm curious. Tell us a little bit about the title of it and what you're hoping that young readers are going to take away from it.
Yeah, so this is co-written with Trisha Goyer, who's an amazing author.
What does she write? Like
And
5 books a day?
yeah, I think something like that. She's
It's
literally
something.
written over 90 books.
I know
She's
something like that. Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Some sort
And
of
so
award.
we just combined our powers together and said, let's do something together. And so it's called Wonders of the Ocean Realm. It comes out January 7th. This is designed for upper elementary and middle school kids. And it is you just follow five really unique ocean animals in their life from birth to when they get fully grown, and they go through adventures, but it's kind of documentary like in the way it's written. We give them names. We've got Dexter the mimic octopus and Maximus the peacock mantis shrimp, really cute, interesting animals, but you get to see God's design, their unique body design to live where they live, how to survive, and how their environment works with them. And so we have little call outs throughout the book that have some fun facts. Then we also have at the end of each of the 5 stories, there's 5 stories in the book, there's some interesting facts from a scientific standpoint, from seeing God's fingerprints in creation. And then we ask students more things about themselves, kind of mini devotional like, but questions that you can see the benefit of studying our world and studying nature, because God's revelation is both in his special revelation, his word, and his general revelation in his creation. And so this is the general revelation, and how when we talk about Wendell the humpback whale, who is a tiny whale, is learning to communicate with his mother, and that communication, and how communication is so important, especially with our communication with our Lord. And how do we communicate? If we don't communicate, we get lost. And so we get into that. We really want kids to have that wonder and excitement of animals maybe they've never heard of, and then also to bring parents in, because there's also these little questions for them to talk about afterwards. So so that's the newest one. Super thrilled about it.
So great.
Yeah.
And you obviously do a ton of work with Apologia. Tell us a little bit about that science curriculum, because it's fantastic.
Yeah, I've written their general science curriculum, which is 7th grade, and then I've marine biology curriculum. But then I do the instructional videos for all their middle school and high school courses, where we go through every single section of the book, teaching each section, but using animations, going on location, doing experiments, videos, and so it literally walks students through every single step of the entire course, which has been a lot of fun to film. So
I know you got to get out here
because
because we're teaching that here at the Homeschool Resource Center. So you're going to be like a little mini celebrity. Hey, as we wrap this up today, we got just a couple of minutes left. I want to get back to talking about the mom who's, home with her kids, or maybe she's at the jumping off place. A lot of the people that listen to the show have been kind of following me for, 15 now, sometimes some of them even 20 years, because I've been doing this for a long time. And they're more in my season of life where they're kind of seeing themselves, maybe like you are too, kind of at the jumping off place. How can you encourage a mom who's either at that place, or she can see sort of that the season in her life is going to be changing, to sort of know what God has next for her, sort of what a mom does when she grows up?
Right. Yeah, I think that the best encouragement would be to be mindful and observant, because God's going to bring to you things. I mean, he may be bringing something to me saying, hey, there's this opportunity. I'm like, no, I want to do this. There's opportunity. No, I want to do this. And we can sometimes put that aside because we don't think that's what God wants us to do.
Right.
But consider what he's bringing before you. Be prayerful. Ask your spouse, your husband, for his input. Even talk to your kids about it. And they'll say, Mom, you're really good at this, or you're really good at that. They watch you. They know you. You might get I don't know, and that's okay too. But I think the big question is not what I should do. No, I'm sorry. Is what I should do. It's not that I don't know what I want to do. I mean, God has something for you.
Yes.
So he knows he's got something for you. There's not nothing out there. It's something. We just don't know what the something is. So be prayerful, be mindful, and be observant to see. Look at the skills, the things you enjoy. I mean, the things you enjoy doing are something. It's a gift.
I
God
think
has
that's
given you.
I think that's a massive indicator, and
Absolutely.
have told my kids that even as they try to figure out what career paths they want to take, I'm always like, what is it that you're interested in? As it turns out, Skylar, who's our firstborn son, is working on my studio, and he's just doing a fantastic job. And ever since he was little, I noticed, like, I was reading science curriculum, and that kid had to be his hand had to be moving, whether it was building a Lego castle or Lincoln Logs or whatever. He absorbed information when his hands were busy doing something. And I've always known this kid's going to work with his hands. He was a kinesthetic learner. He needed the movement, and look what's happening now. He's right now, he's down there, working. I'll send you pictures. You're going to love the new
love
studio.
that.
It's
Yeah.
extraordinary. But he's
Well,
taking
that's
this
a
love
gift.
of building
Yeah.
that God's given him, and a love of technology. He loves trying to figure out the sound and all of the components that go to making a really good studio, which of course he gets from my husband, Jay. But to watch those things come together in God's unique package in Skylar is really fun for me as a mom to sort of unfold. And it was always in him. And I loved it.
Yes.
I love that you're saying that, because I think God's already put it in us.
Yes.
And we just need, what is it that you naturally gravitate toward? What do you love doing? Pursue that, because God put it in you.
He's given us a mind, hands, and a heart. And all of those are something that we can use. Now, granted, there may be a financial component where you need to earn money for the household for whatever reason. And sometimes there's a tent making type of responsibility where you need to work. And it may be a job that, I don't
love this.
fulfilled or whatever,
Yeah.
right? But if you're doing good work and earning money for it, and that's what needs to be done, then ask the Lord to give you an interest in the people in your work, or how else that can benefit you. Because again, we may not always get to work in our passion. I might have a passion for brewing coffee, and I may not be able to do that for a living. I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at it. My husband does good coffee, but I do terrible coffee. But I'm just saying that it may be a passion that we need to use on the side. And if God's given us assignment of this is the time to make an income for your household,
Yes.
then it's okay. But again, ask him to change your heart. Ask him to show you how he can use that to build skills for even the next assignment, or to make you embrace the situation. We're always around people. We always can minister and love on people. And that's one of our prime directives, I think, is to spread the gospel and show God's love. So we can do that.
It goes back to being salt.
everywhere. That's right. That's right.
It goes back to being salt. Sherri Seligson, you are a national treasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. And I'm so excited about your new book, and excited to see what God's going to do with your life, as you and I are kind of coming in the same sort of season over here.
Yes,
so it's exciting to see that God has things in store. So thank you for coming on the show. Where can people find you if they want to find out more about you?
You can find me at sherriseligson.com. The book will be at tyndale.com, or you can get it on Amazon. It's you can pre-order it now. Apologia.com as well.
And the name of it again is?
The book is Wonders of the Ocean Realm.
Wonders of the Ocean Realm. All right. I can't wait. You have to send me one here.
Definitely.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you. Thank you so much, my friend, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
If you guys want more information on Sherri Seligson, hop on over to the show notes. I will link back to her and to her new book today. You guys, listen, science and faith are not incompatible. Don't be afraid to get your kids out into the world, because God's fingerprints are literally everywhere. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great day. I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and